Welcome to the Post Protecting Your Nest podcast session. I'm Dr. Hampton, board certified in obesity and family medicine with 23 years of clinical experience. And we just recorded episode number 9 with my guest and friend, Vinnie Tortorich. And during that episode, we talked about exercise. That exercise episode will be available on August the 28th in your favorite podcast app store. Again, if you don't know what a podcast is, it's an app you can put on your phone. It's a conversation. It's an audio. So if you're having trouble with that, have a friend or family member help you to put a podcast app, Spotify, Apple. All those are ways to get that great information because Vinny's an expert on fitness, but today we're going to have a different discussion. He wanted to join me after the podcast and talk a little bit about diet, and it is his belief that we shouldn't have a lot of sugar in our diet and we shouldn't have a lot of grains in our diet. And it's a pretty obvious thing if you know Vinny because he has a hashtag no sugar, NS, no grains, NG. And again, I did a video recently where we talked about what we feed the cows at the end of their lives. We feed them grains to make the cows big. So unless you're a cow, you shouldn't be eating all those grains. So, and actually you could argue the cows shouldn't be either. So if you know anybody who's not sure about grains or sugar and that they can be harmful, please at this moment have a share party, share this video because we have some information to share with you today. So, Vinny, you just introduced yourself on the podcast. How about you introduce yourself to this audience so they know a little bit about why we're buddies on Twitter?
Yeah, we met on Twitter a few years ago, and I started following your tweets, and it wasn't long after that when I said, "Hey, Tony, how about coming on the show?"
That's right.
Back then it was half the characters you can do now. You can do double that. So you came on the show, and then after you were on the show, you were one of those guests where people kept saying, "Hey, when are you going to have Tony Hampton back on?" It's like, I can't ask the guy to be on every week. He's actually saving lives, and
Right.
So I got the gumption up and said, "Hey, Tony, look, if you're not busy, would you mind coming back on again?"
That's right.
You were very gracious. And I think you probably did that because we both went to college in the same town, New Orleans. You were at the very prestigious Xavier University. I was across town at Tulane.
That's right.
Almost at the same time. I'm 5 years older than you, so I was leaving. I was still in New Orleans, but I was out of college when you were coming in.
That's right. Something I hadn't shared with you before is, so Xavier, it wasn't really a party school. It was actually kind of interesting because we had, when I first started there, the nuns walked around. It was the only historically Black Catholic school in the country. And so you had to kind of take it down a notch, but they did allow us to have fun. So on a Friday, somewhere between 2 and 3, you would be on what they called the yard. And on the yard, it was just hanging out with your friends, and it was, and of course we had catfish on Friday. It was, I love that catfish. Oh, yeah. So, but this is the thing. I had a buddy of mine, his name is Dobbin Bookman, and we were study buddies. So we would literally on a Friday still go and study between like 3 and 8 or so. But one of the things I was going to tell you is I would sneak away sometimes and go to Tulane because I had to get away from Xavier to go to a completely different institution where people didn't know me. And then we would study at Tulane and in the library. So, Tulane is a place I probably, that's the only part of the building I know, but I just wanted to share that there's that connection. And how in the heck can a guy from Louisiana avoid certain foods because they have some of the best tasting food on the planet? Not always best for you, but how was it hard for you to transition to a lifestyle where it's less sugar and less grains, having the culture of the South? I mean, every time they show us a map of the sickest people in the world or in the country, it's always the South, right? Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. So how does a guy like you know, with that background, leave Louisiana and then somehow get into this food thing. How did that happen for you?
Well, even when I was down on the bayou, literally as a kid, you know, the Cajun culture is all about food, and man, it is not the healthiest food in the world. It's delicious. But, you know, we talked about it in the other show. I got into fitness when I was 8 years old. So I had this kind of weird predisposition to not eat the junk, right? So the way I would do it is I would compartmentalize. So I would say, okay, catfish only once a week. And then after I really got into fitness and realized that fried food was not good once a week, I went, okay, catfish twice a month. And it could be any days I want, but twice a month. And a lot of times I would wait till like the 30th and just have it the 30th and 31st. So I could have it 2 days in a row. But you know, that's kid thinking. I knew early on this stuff is not good for you because of the way you feel. If you ate a piece of meat, I could go to the gym and work out like an animal. If I ate a bunch of eggs, and back then I would drink the eggs, and don't do that, people. I gave myself salmonella a couple of times doing that.
Right.
You don't want salmonella. I was young enough to just survive it. But yeah, I would eat a lot of eggs and feel great and go to the gym and work out. Yet if I had gumbo, it was, okay, I got to take a nap now.
Right.
You know, my friends would go, hey, we're all going down to the donut shop and having a bunch of donuts or croissants or whatever they were having. And I would go, no, I can't do that because every time I eat it, I would call it getting lazy. You know, it's like, oh, I don't feel like working out now. I want to take a nap. I noticed the same thing from pasta, you know. So it didn't take long to figure out if I wanted to do my sports, I would have to just kind of stay away from it. And, you know, I want to go back to something you mentioned a little earlier, Tony. You mentioned it in the podcast and you just mentioned it again. You talked about cows and how they would have them live on grass and then grain finish them to get them marbled up. Two statements I want to make. One is about cows. And a cow can handle some grains because, in fact, they have 4 stomachs.
That's right.
And they keep regurgitating the food. Grains are not meant to be consumed by anything, not even cattle. They eat grass all day long, and the stomachs handle that really well. But look what happens as soon as we put them on grains, even though they have the 4 stomachs to kind of break it down. The other thing I wanted to mention on the other show, but I think it's better to mention it here, the state of California outlawed years ago, I want to say 6-7 years ago, something like that. They outlawed goose pate, and I think you brought that up.
Yeah.
I think you brought that up. Okay, the reason they outlawed it is because they found it to be inhumane to force feed a goose grains.
Right.
And the reason they would do that is to give it fatty liver disease. They would fat the liver to make pate. But it's okay. The same government that says this is bad for a goose and this is cruel and unusual punishment for this animal. By the way, folks, go eat all the grains you want.
That's right. It's the foundation of the food pyramid. If you look at, anybody can Google the food pyramid, look at an image, and all you see are grains that they're telling us we should be eating. But Vinnie's saying they don't even want to feed that to the geese or the duck. I mean, how ridiculous. In fact, one of the questions, Vinnie, from Beverly Miller was, I have type 2 diabetes and my blood sugars are out of control. I need your help. I'm at my wit's end. What you say, Vinnie? You think she should, you think Beverly should eat some grains?
Well, if she eats grains, look, if you have type 2 diabetes, if you have fatty liver disease, look what happens to the goose.
Right.
What's good for the goose is good for Beverly. Just cut them out. And you go, okay, I'm going to cut them out. What should I have? Well, have fatty cuts of meat. And you normally, and you were trained this way, I was trained this way at Tulane. Wait, if you eat fatty meat, you're going to have more fatty liver disease. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You start reversing it by eating good red meat and chicken and fish, getting the good omega-3s in your body from things like olive oil and other fruit oils, coconut, what have you. Stay away from seed oils.
Right.
And Beverly, your problem goes away. It goes away, and your doctor's going to go, oh, look, the meds are working. No, it's not the meds that are working.
Right. That's right.
You're going to
not the meds. The meds are really just to maintain you at a reasonable number, but it's definitely not the meds. So I think that's really important. She mentioned she's not a bread eater or very much meats. And the only thing I want to say to that is the meats are your friend. I was just telling Vinnie, I ate probably, I don't know how much it was, a couple of pounds. I divided it 3 ways, and I ate ground beef for lunch. It was literally like, you can call it dog food. I just ate some ground beef that was well seasoned as I was on my way to do the podcast, and I feel great. I do not feel tired or fatigued. And when you eat that type of grainy food, Beverly, you're going to find that you're going to struggle. And one thing you want to remember when you look at the box, they're going to have carbs, and you can just divide that carbohydrate number by 4. It gives you an approximation of teaspoons of sugar. So if you look at a grain, a box, something like, I don't know, Raisin Bran or any of that stuff, you'll see probably 30 to 40 carbs. So you're really looking at 8 or 9 teaspoons of sugar in what's supposed to be good for you. So again, once you become aware of this, it'll really help you. So one of the ways that Vinnie has blessed us, not only by having his podcast show, Fitness Confidential, not only by sharing tweets that inspire and motivate people, Vinnie also has something on his hat called the Fat Documentary. It's clearly a documentary because he wasn't very creative with the title.
Yeah, I'm not known for my titles.
Yeah, he's not very creative, but it's to the point. And for me, we have to fix the fear of fat. So for anybody that's not seen that documentary, I want Vinnie to, first of all, make sure people know how to get to the documentary. But more importantly, could you talk a little bit about the messaging in the documentary? I think a lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of people may not know anything about that. So they may be meeting you for the first time. So let's share a little bit about your documentary.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't want to do a documentary, and people kept saying, hey, you're one of the leaders in this field. And, people like Ken Berry and all these other people, well, they're doctors. They're actually healing people every day. And people kept saying, well, you need to do a documentary. And I kept saying, why me? And they said, well, you're in Hollywood. And I was like, that doesn't make me a documentarian. That makes me a guy with a car.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, but you know people. And I was like, yeah, I do know people. But again, it doesn't make me a documentarian. But I am a guy that collects information. So I looked at it from that standpoint. I went, okay, I'm really good at collecting information and disseminating that information, putting it out there. And I started thinking about it. It's like, okay, what if I could get my friend Nina Teichels to show up for an interview, and my buddy Gary Taubes? And what if I could get, Dr. Drew to pop in, and this guy and that guy? And when I started asking these people, oddly enough, none of them said no. They were like, oh, yeah, we'll come sit down for an interview. As a matter of fact, the aforementioned Gary Taubes was the only one who said, what do you know about making a documentary? And I said, that's a good question, Gary. I don't know anything. So if I were you, I would run. And but he sat down anyway for the interview. And I was lucky enough to have Peter Pardini, who was just coming off of the documentary about the band Chicago called Now More Than Ever. And that thing was winning awards left and right and the whole thing. This kid knew how to make a documentary. So we sat around and we got along really well. And when I say he's a kid, he was like 27 or 28. And this kid is just this wonderkind filmmaker. And we came up with this concept, and we interviewed these people. And when we cut it, we kind of sat there and went, wow. at least I did. I was like, did we just do this? You know? And we put it out there. You could get it on iTunes. Tony, I don't know if you know this, but it went to the top of iTunes. Last summer, this movie Free Solo, where this nutty kid climbs up El Capitan with no ropes or anything else, that was staying at #1 forever.
Gotcha.
We came in and toppled that on iTunes.
Wow.
And
a
then,
documentary, that is surprising.
It was shocking. And here's the funny part, Amazon, we were just joking about the title. It says Fat, a documentary. The whole title has the word documentary in it. But Amazon misplaced it and put it like in sports and leisure. So we called Amazon and said, hey, it's a documentary. And they were, oh, our mistake. They put it in action adventure. We called them back and said, hey, guys, it says documentary in the title. So then they put it in rom-coms. So someone over there was a vegan and just didn't want this movie to be seen.
Right.
Even when it was being thrown around Amazon, it started selling like hotcakes. Like everyone started watching this to the point where Amazon couldn't deny it anymore, and they made it an Amazon Prime, and then it shot up to #1 on Amazon Prime.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, and then every airliner picked it up. People were going, "Hey, I'm on Malaysian Airlines, and look, and hey, I'm on Alaskan Airlines, and look, and I'll never forget the fateful day when I was actually. I was on was it Delta? I don't know. I was on one of the airlines that travel a lot, and I see my movie is in the queue.
One of the options, yeah.
So I waited until we were flying for about an hour and a half, and I walked all the way to the back of the plane to pretend I was going to the bathroom, and then I checked every seat on the way to see. And sure enough, 3 or 4 people were watching the movie.
That's what I'm talking about.
It freaked me out a little bit. Now, out of 200 people, 3 or 4 people had it on. And on one of the people, as I was passing by, it was me on the screen.
Oh, my God.
It wasn't like Gary Taubes or Nina Teichels or, Ian Felt or one of those
That's
guys,
right.
or Eric Westman. It was me. And for a quick second, like I had this kind of cold thing go through my body and went, I'm on the back of a chair, airliner. I mean, my mom was here right now.
I know, that is so cool. Nobody noticed you though, right? They didn't identify you.
Not one person, because I looked like a tramp hat. I never shaved. I got glasses on. I got a hat. I'm homeless. People are usually walking away from me, but I'm all clean shaven and everything. And I couldn't see, but I didn't have my glasses on that day. And
so this guy who don't know how to make a film exceeds expectations for himself, it sounds like, and that's amazing. What about this ideal of part 2? I know you mentioned that. So what's going on with that? Where are you at in that process?
It is done. It's complete. It's with the attorneys now. Lawyers have to bathe over everything, and where did you get this clip from, and what? Yeah. And you have to show them that, you paid for the clip and the music is paid for, and, this is fair use. And I know you guys deal with malpractice and attorneys, Tony. It's like that.
Yeah. It's just nonstop craziness. So that's fair. I wanted to throw some on the screen, and this is from Beverly, and she said she had severe gastritis, migraine headaches, and facing back surgery. And, only comments I would make are that I know you recently talked to Sean Baker with Meat RX. And for those who are carnivore oriented, I bring up Sean's name and his podcast and his YouTube channel, because as a carnivore, meaning he eats primarily just meat, one of the areas that really benefits are things like leaky gut and gastritis. They tend to, because all the inflammatory foods like the grains and the starches and sugars just goes away. So I just want to say that out loud, because I think that people who struggle with their belly may find that way of eating is something to at least experiment with. everything we know about nutrition science is not as good as we'd like because we don't have the kind of double-blind studies that we'd like to have. I also want to mention, I think about Dr. Christine, I think it's Bear, who works with Dr. Brian Linsky in San Diego, and we follow them on Twitter. And I remember hearing her talk about when she went keto, and I don't think she's carnivore yet, but when she went keto, her migraines went away. So when you feed your brain the fatty food instead of the sugary, starchy, and grainy food, you do much better. And then for the back, I would argue that anything like this is anti-inflammatory. So Vinnie, any additional comments about her question?
Yeah, I'm actually writing down Christine Bear because I was supposed to have her on the show.
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
I forgot. I'm actually writing notes while.
Yeah, well, I tag her a lot in my tweets because I'm really excited about the practice they have in San Diego, and they're trying to bring that whole low carb. And really, it's just about real food. That's why I'm saying carnivore. That's why I'm saying no sugar, no grain. I'm saying low fat. I'm saying keto. I just want to heal people metabolically, and you can do it in a lot of different ways. So I just wanted to make sure that that thought was shared. So thank you for letting us know a little bit about. So you don't really have a date yet for the part 2?
No, but if you said okay, guess, I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 months. By the time everything is, they got to batten down the hatches and everything has to be sewn up, but it's in the can. And
okay.
I'm perhaps even more proud of this one than the first one because this one goes deep. The first one was a history.
Okay.
This one is, okay, you saw the history. Now you want to see more, right? Here's more. Here's the more. And so that's what we're doing with that. By the way, I want to say to Miller, was it Miller, the woman who was just.
Yeah, that was Beverly Miller, yeah.
Yeah, Sean Baker, he has Meat RX, but one of his hashtags is Meat Heals.
Yeah.
And nothing goes away overnight, but if you start moving in that direction, you're going to see some major increases. You might notice that, hey, I'm sleeping through the night more without as much acid reflux, and oh wait, last month I had 35 migraines. I had one a day. This month I only had 15, or whatever the case may be. And before you know it, you're wondering where any of that sickness went. But stick with it. Don't give up on your doctors, but stick with what you're doing, and you might see a big difference at some point.
That's right. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate her comments. And I was actually, when you mentioned, writing down Dr. Christine Bear's name so you can interview her. We have a lot of people we follow on Twitter mutually that we respect and love, and some are low carb, some are keto, and some are carnivore. And by the way, we have a new person that you may want to put on your to-do list. She calls herself the Black Carnivore, and you may want to write that down. You'll see her on Twitter, Black. I think it's a _carnivore, Black _carnivore. You may want to consider her as a potential guest. And as I think about all these different ways that we can encourage people to consider eating, no sugar, no grain versus keto, I just want you to comment a little bit about, is there a difference between keto and what you kind of promote, which is no sugar, no grain?
It's all the same thing. Whether it's NSNG, which is my thing, or Atkins, or low carb, or keto, they're all in the same ballpark. Now, I'll say this. When Dr. Atkins was around, he's rolling over in his grave over what they did to, because Atkins, what he was doing back in the 70s was just amazing. But after he died, whoever bought up the company now sells crappy Atkins bars and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. The same thing is happening with the term keto. Like I saw a food the other day that said keto certified. And I started laughing. It's like, keto certified. Who's certifying this keto?
That's right.
Government group, is it part of the FDA? Are we doing this under, Food and Drug? Are we doing this? Where are we doing this? Because there is no certification. Anybody, you could take a bucket of sugar and print on the side keto certified keto. It doesn't matter. It is what it is, right? So, so I'm okay with people calling it whatever they want: low carb, keto, NSNG, Atkins. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you're cutting out sugars and grains. And by the way, Tony, that's why I kept my thing that simple. You got to remember, my podcast is in its 9th year, which means I wrote the book before the podcast. So the book has been out for 8 years. So the book is almost 10 years old.
Okay.
When I was writing the book, my writing partner, Dean Laurie, who's a big Hollywood comedy writer, he said, why is it? Because I made it a steadfast rule, the word ketogenic would not appear in my book. And we were having lunch one day, and he said, because he was one of my big clients who I took a lot of weight off of and the whole deal. He said, why is it that you won't put the word keto or ketogenic? Keto wasn't a term yet, it was ketogenic.
Mm-hmm.
I said, because every doctor out there is going to call me a lunatic and tell me that I'm telling people to go into ketoacidosis, and they're going to say I'm trying to kill people. Because ketoacidosis sounds so much like ketogenic, I knew that there was going to be some conflation there. And I didn't want that. So I said from day one, I'm not putting that word, and I'm not going to use it. And he goes, well, what are you going to use? I said, just tell the truth. Cut out sugars, cut out grains, end of story.
That's right. That makes a lot of sense. And I want to, and thank you, C. Bliss, for giving Black Carnivore, it's at Black Carnivore on Instagram, but I did check my phone, and I saw that it was at Black_Carnivore. So what I told you was right for Twitter.
What's her name, Tony, by the way? Do you know?
Huh?
Do you know her name, or you just know her as Black_?
That's a great question. I think she's, labeled herself that way, and that's funny. I think it's not coming to mind right now. And what I'll do is I'll send you a little, I'll send you something after the show. Oh, that's funny. It's Fox. It's EDE Fox on Facebook. EDE, and then the last name is Fox. She'll kill me. It's like, you've been dating somebody and you're like, oh, I don't know her name. But yeah, I'm just thinking like Black Carnivore. And I think that's a great tagline, because as we try to expand the audience, she's going to maybe get an audience that, that she can kind of connect with, that may talk about topics that may resonate. So, and I wanted to also throw on the screen the following. My main dish is fresh vegetables, and I love fruit. My family says I don't eat enough to keep a bird alive. And the only thing I would comment there is we tend to encourage berries if you're gonna do fruit. I made a video on YouTube, and it was basically titled, "Is fruit a health food or a snack?" And I think we both would argue that there's a lot of good phytonutrients and antioxidants in fruit, but a banana has 7 teaspoons of sugar. A serving of grapes probably similarly. So you got to be careful. So what I would say is focus on the berries if you're going to eat it. It's not an essential nutrient. So fruit are not essential to live. I consider them snacks, and if I do snack, and I had some blueberries on the way here with my ground beef. And basically, the ground beef is more important than the fruit. So I just wanted to say that out loud, because a lot of times we get confused about, we've been told for years, eat your fruit. And I think the vegetables I can live with, but the fruit is, in my mind, a snack. And so I do want to ask you, let's leave the grain section of the NSNG and talk about the sugar. So, and you had mentioned cancer in the podcast. I want you to talk a little bit about why sugar is harmful. and the cancer connection for sugar.
If you look at before the early to mid 1800s, no one in the world really ate sugar. And as a matter of fact, whenever sugar was available, it was like this super duper treat for really, really rich people because it was hard to get. Coffee was the same way at one time. You couldn't get coffee. But the average person, with all the fruit they ate back then, only ate somewhere between 2 and 3 pounds of sugar per person per year if you added up all the vegetation and fruit they had.
Okay.
So we went for eons as humans and we didn't eat fruit. And when fruit was available, it was only as a treat whenever it was available wherever you were. So if you lived in a tropical area, bananas were available whenever. If you lived in a place where apples could grow, you might have apples or what have you. So, but overall, most people didn't eat any sugar. Then sugar became a thing. The problem with sugar is, it's a simple carbohydrate. Once you drink it or eat it, once it goes down your gullet, it gets to your stomach, there's nothing to break down. Once it mixes with the stomach acid, people don't realize it doesn't look like a little sugar going over to your liver. It mixes with the acids and everything, and this chemical is made. It goes to your liver, and you get this immediate spike. Notice sometimes when you're eating sugar, almost immediately you feel good.
Right.
You get a spike, and it comes down. Well, most people will go, wait, I like that spike. I like the way it tasted, and I like what it did. But it's kind of like back in the 80s when everybody was doing cocaine. They'll go, wait, it was good. It was good. But it's gone. I need to get the spike again and the spike again. And that's how you'll go and you'll go, man, that was a whole pie and I ate 3/4 of it. Most people can admit to doing that because they kept wanting that spike.
That's right.
And every time that spike happens, your body has to release insulin and cortisol to go and cover that spike. And when it covers it, since your blood is already topped off with sugar, it's got to do something with the rest of the sugar. So the insulin makes quick work of it, turns it into a long-chain triglyceride, and stores it as a fat.
Yeah.
The other big problem with that is when you keep releasing insulin over and over and over and over again, it's kind of like Tony, I never drink beer, right? Mm-hmm. I barely drink at all. But if someone gave me one beer, I get loopy because I'm not used to that beer. But I have friends who drink beer like they work out on beer.
Right.
So if they had 6, 7, 8 beers, they're still not slurring. I'm slurring on that first beer, right? The same thing happens with insulin. If you keep getting that insulin hit, you're like the guy who drinks beer over and over and over again. You're now resistant to that hormone, right? So now you're starting the beginning of type 2 diabetes. And we're not going to get into it because this is a video, but a metabolic process is now happening.
That's right.
Because you were doing something that you thought was innocuous. You were eating pie. How can pie be bad for you? It's America. We eat apple pie.
That's right.
If you're in the South, you eat pecan pie.
That's right.
So, and then, if you look around, we now live in a world where there's hell, when I was a kid, when you went to a gas station, they served the gas for your car. Now they have a whole thing of every chocolate and every gummy bear and soft serve ice cream and all this stuff. And we think it's normal just every day to keep doing this.
Yeah.
You're a few years younger than me, but remember when we were kids? Back when we were kids.
Yeah, back then.
It was a treat if you had ice cream.
Oh yeah.
It was like, oh my God, we're having ice cream. Now it's like, yeah, I'm filling up. You get an ice. They might even put a little thing at the pump.
Yeah. So it looks like Vinny got stuck there for a second. Oh, you're back now. I lost you for a second, but you're good. So
anyway, it's like game on with sugar all the time now.
Yeah.
When we were kids, Coke used to come in a 7-ounce bottle. that big thick glass bottle.
I remember that.
You could get a big gulp. It's like 60 some odd ounces of Coke. It's like that big. Yeah.
And one 8-ounce Coke, Pepsi, 7-Up, whatever, they're all about 9 teaspoons of sugar. So when you start thinking about that, it's ridiculous. One thing that is interesting is Corey commented, a struggle with sugar is an ongoing fight since cutting the sugar and grains out last year. Just being in a room with sugar, the anxiety goes up. And if you want to comment, you can, but I will say this first. I just had Dr. Joan Iflin on the podcast. Her episode will be released this Friday. And our friend Vinnie's episode will be released the following Friday. But I'm saying this to say that for some people, there may be this idea of a processed food addiction. I don't think that's necessarily everybody, but you may want to check out that episode. We did do a YouTube video as well, just like this, a post podcast that's available now. So just search my name and Joan Iflin. You may want to watch that because she gives the diagnostic criteria for processed food addiction. But from your perspective, Vinnie, have you seen a lot of people who, because sometimes you get away from this and you do pretty good because you're away from you're not eating it. But do you see people struggle with this even after getting rid of it after a while?
Yeah. There are two types of people. You see, and I deal with a lot of people that go between 350 and 600 pounds, which is a far cry different from what I was working with in Hollywood. And the ones that succeed long term are the ones that just go, screw it. Today is the day, and I'm never going to touch it again. It's almost like telling an alcoholic, yeah, you can have a cocktail once a week. It's just not going to work. So yeah, they're very addicted to the sugar and these grains. And we've seen through science that your brain lights up when you eat stuff, just like with the aforementioned cocaine, your brain lights up. So it's better to just stay away altogether, just cut it out. Yeah. And we'll go, well, that's not fair. They still have to live in a world with all this stuff. Well, what a lot of people do after they lose X amount of weight, or they do it for several months, they might go and say, well, let me see where I am. Let me go have a little ice cream. And that little ice cream might turn into a weekend of debauchery.
Right. That's right. And so that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to throw another question up about chicken and animal liver. And I think what we're saying is chicken versus beef liver. And I know from my perspective, it's so weird because, we spent all these years saying eat chicken, eat turkey and fish, and we demonize the beef. And I'm pretty certain, I'm actually in a Master's for Nutrition training program now. And in my training, we've already kind of touched on liver as probably the most nutrient dense food on the planet. So if you can eat organ meats and tolerate it, I encourage. Some people, what I've heard from Sean Baker and the Black Carnivores, what they do, they can incorporate the liver. They'll have like ground liver, and then they'll kind of throw it into beef liver, and they'll kind of sneak it in. And a lot of times they tolerate it. But just from my experience, I'm not sure what you would say, but from my experience, beef liver is a little bit more nutrient rich than chicken in general. So I think the fear of beef, a lot of people, when they're trying to change their lifestyle, they say, well, I don't want to eat beef. I'm going to cut back on meat. And actually, they should do the opposite. They should actually eat more meat. And rather it's, grass-fed and all those things are, is it better? Yeah, it's probably better. But the first thing is to get rid of the sugar and the grains. And then we'll worry about grass-fed later. But I would argue, just based on what I'm learning, the benefit is there, but it may not be enough for you to spend that kind of money. So you have to really decide what's best for you. I do try to eat grass-fed and organic, but I just don't want a person with less resources to not think this is possible because they can't get the perfect animal version. Any thoughts on that, Vinny?
Yeah, there's a lot to to unravel there. Look, I don't like the taste of liver, and I have to sneak it in.
Yeah.
And I'll do the whole smothering with the onions and the whole thing. It is the most nutrient part of the animal. I don't know if the study's ever been done whether beef or chicken is more nutrient dense.
Right.
But if you ask me to take a stab at it, I'm going with what Tony said.
Yeah.
I'm going with the beef liver. Now, I'm with you. People say to me all the time, Proud Cow's been a long sponsor of my show, and they have all the high-end, small farms, farm to table type beefs and the whole thing. And that's all good and fine. But I don't have kids in school. We're an older couple now. Things are paid for in our lives. So we will do 50% of the time that kind of meat. It doesn't mean that we don't eat the lesser cuts. We have to. I can't afford it every day. So I always say afford what you can when you can.
Yeah.
And if you go, well, I can't afford organic, I was talking earlier about the term keto is, organic doesn't mean anything. So if you see organic on your meat, it's just another throw word.
Right.
It probably doesn't mean anything. But yeah, if all you can afford is the regular cuts of meat, that's fine. It doesn't have to be grass fed and grass finished and the whole thing. As a matter of fact, I can make an argument that those meats taste better than the high end meats because they do have some grains at the end.
That's right. And I am absolutely there. And I always tell people, Dr. Hampton shops at Aldi's. I go to Aldi's first. And then if they don't have what I need, then I'll look at other. But I'm a pretty simple guy. I need, they have enough of the meat selections that I need. They typically don't. I don't see a lot of liver there, to be honest with you. So a lot of times when I need liver, I'll go elsewhere. But the point is, don't make this complicated. This is simple. You need an animal. If you're not a carnivore, you need a 1 or 2 non-starchy sides. That's all. And then you can eat that for leftovers for lunch if you like. Yeah. This is not complicated stuff. So don't make it hard. What's your animal? Everybody eats animals. If you're not a vegetarian or vegan, shout out to the veg and vegans. You do you, I do me. And then you find there's got to be, so many vegetable options. You mean to tell me you can't find, 12 to 15 vegetables that you like that you can rotate every few weeks? It's not that complicated. So don't make this hard, guys, because what you may change will change your life. I'm curious as I look at your documentary, and I know the other one's coming, but a lot of people get confused about, let's not say confused. Who do you trust? Do I trust Vinnie, who talked to these low-carb experts, or do I trust What the Health documentary? And you have people like, Dr. Ornish and Esselstein's. And so my question is, why would you expect somebody to watch your documentary compared to What the Health and actually have faith that what you're saying is more scientifically based versus what the other documentary is saying?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because we're saying we're diametrically opposed. And I'm with you. I have nothing against vegans, but I do have something against the people who are lying in the vegan community, and that's Esselstein and Clapper, and I could go through all the names, Grieger and Kahn, and you might see Joe Kahn is always commenting on my Twitter. I don't block him. I only block when vegans start getting into the minutia, and they start yelling and telling us that we're killing sentient beings and we're eating dead carcass. And I go, okay, whenever we start getting into ad hominem, conversation over. But I do have a problem when Grieger and McDougall and have I mentioned them all?
I get out of here.
No. When they just out and out lie, like I'll give a real example of a lie.
Okay.
In that movie, What the Health, they said that eating a hot dog is equivalent to smoking 5 cigarettes a day, 1 hot dog. Well, is there a study that you could point me to? If you go to Dr. Grieger's website, it says, and I'm not making this up, I just saw it's still there, that eating even one egg per week, one chicken egg per week, can cause type 2 diabetes. Now, I think we can both agree, Tony, that a chicken egg has protein and fat. And the only way to get type 2 diabetes is to have sugar.
Right.
And you would have to eat a lot more sugar than once a week.
That's right.
That's just a bold-faced lie.
Yeah, that's not true. Well, I ate 3 eggs a day and I don't have diabetes. It doesn't make sense. I eat eggs pretty much 5 out of 7 days. And I never eat one.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I eat somewhere between 3 and 8 a day.
Right. So it's just,
I don't have any form of diabetes. Shouldn't I be dead?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the macronutrient that affects your risk for diabetes is carbs or sugar, and grains are carbs. That's why we're saying no grains as well as no sugar. So that's a good example. And you would expect that a documentary of any worth would not make statements that are that obviously not correct. And even the College of Cardiology recently put out a position statement saying fat is not harmful. There's no evidence that saturated fat is a risk for heart disease. And they knew that before they put the position statement out. But but guess what? It didn't make CNN. It didn't make NSNBC. It didn't make Fox. And it's just sad that you have to go to Twitter to get this information. And I heard it from Dr. Ken Berry when he did a little announcement on Twitter, and then he had a little video at the end of the day from his office. And I'm just embarrassed that we live in a society that just can't be. We just want to be scientists. You learn something, you have a hypothesis, you vet it, and you're not disappointed that people challenge you, because that's what scientists do. They're challenging each other. Instead, we're just too busy trying to get the next grant. And so there's a lot of politics in that. So, but I won't belabor that. I just wanted to get a feel for your perspective about, because people, they have these different documentaries saying different things. And that's what you're going to have to listen to us, and then you got to listen to the other folk, and then you're going to have to use a little common sense. If they tell you, oh, it's okay to eat a lot of, go ahead and eat the Raisin Bran, and all you got to do is do your own experiment. Eat the Raisin Bran if you're diabetic and see what happens to your sugars. I mean, that's the best evidence right there. So that's what I would suggest. Now, if you're fortunate to not be insulin resistant, first of all, you wouldn't be diabetic. But if you're fortunate to be insulin sensitive, then eat your Raisin Bran. But for most Americans, we are insulin resistant. And I think we can go as high as 70 or 80% of us struggle with these things. So we need to be careful. Let me ask you about this next real quick question from one of our followers. It says, does olive oil variance matter, or butter? And I mean, I'm still in school, but when I think olive oil variance, I'm thinking about, premium versus, in terms of olive oil, is it virgin or not, and things like that. So I think virgin, when I see that question, I think about the quality of the oil. And my understanding is that when you have olive oils, they can add other oils to them, and they're not pure. So obviously the most pure version of olive oil you get, the better, because what's the point of having, it mixed with something, then you lose all the so-called benefits. So just as a generic answer, I would say the purest form of virgin, the more virgin it is, the less it has stuff added to it. And then the only other comment I would make, I use a lot of ghee, which is clarified butter, because I like to cook steaks and things on the stovetop. And it can handle the high temperatures. So, but what's your thoughts on oils in general? Do you tell people to avoid oils? Because it's not in your hashtag. So I want to know where it's at.
Seed oils are horrible. And unfortunately, around the world, olive oil, there's a great book that was written 7 or 8, 10 years ago called Extra Virginity. And you can find this stuff depending on where you are in the world. The word extra virgin or, first press, cold press, again, that's all words that's not regulated by anyone. And I noticed that this person is in South Africa. Here in the United States, you're able to cut oil up to 40% and still call it pure first run extra virgin olive oil.
40%.
Yeah, so you can have rapeseed oil, which is canola oil, which is a seed oil, and by the way, once they add 40%, now they have to add some kind of odor back to it to make it smell like olive oil, and they have to add a color back to it to make it look like olive oil.
Oh, God.
So you really have to do your due diligence wherever you are in the world. A lot of good stuff coming out of Italy, a lot of good stuff coming out of Spain. But once it gets to your country, they can repackage that and add whatever their government allows you to put. And it might say first run extra virgin olive oil, and the 60% will be that, but the 40% is what's killing you.
Right.
Be careful.
Wow, that's you're teaching me something tonight. I that 40% number is embarrassing, and I just don't know what to say. I think we have to do better. And again, I think you have to kind of, be your own guard. You have to do your own thing. So, I don't get it. So anyway, tell me a little bit real quick. I know when we did our exercise podcast show, we talked about, I think that one of the first questions I asked you about was the benefits of having muscle mass. And could you comment a little bit about protein in the diet and, your thoughts on how important protein is? And then maybe even comment a little bit about, do you tell any of your clients to take, you're working with celebrities. Do you ever tell them to have protein supplements? Do you have protein supplements you like, or how do you deal with those two things, real protein and protein supplements?
Well, the best protein you got to get from real food, from red meat, from chicken, from the aforementioned eggs, duck eggs or chicken eggs, and you'll get a lot of good protein from cheese and dairy. That's the best way to get it. You can also get some protein from vegetables, but it's not the complete protein. I mean, an egg protein has all the amino acids you need to build muscles. So that's always the best way to go. Red meat, I always call it the poor man's EPO. You got the blood right there. You have the protein. You have the fat. Kids like taking creatine. Meat has creatine in it. It's all right there. It's the perfect food. I was working with a guy that's going through chemo again. He's a good friend of mine because I'm not a doctor, but he was a friend. And the chemo was really, whacking him around. He was up from 170 to 130 pounds, and he was losing muscle mass and everything else. So in that case, I said, okay, let's supplement with some whey protein. Now, you got to remember, even the best whey proteins are bastardized. It's a processed food source. Not as bad as pea protein, but whey protein has more amino acids and is quickly absorbed in your system. And there's a couple of good ones out there. You got to find the plain, pure whey proteins.
Even vanilla. So you're saying even vanilla flavor is not a good idea?
Yeah, because people think vanilla means plain.
Right.
As my friend Adam Carolla would say, vanilla, when you're talking about sex, means plain. But when you're talking about sex, plain is plain. If you're talking about protein, it's a flavor now.
This is a family show, Vinny. Be careful now.
I'm from New Orleans. You got to excuse me.
Yeah, that's all good.
So, yeah, you want the plain stuff. The other one that's good, very few companies make it, is egg protein, egg white protein.
Oh, yeah, I'm a fan.
But I mean, again, it's better to have real
egg,
real chicken.
Yeah, just eat the real food. Yeah. And it's probably cheaper because the protein supplements are they can be a little pricey.
God awful expensive.
Yeah, so it's probably best. And you can enjoy the actual food. So don't be afraid of eating eggs, guys, no matter what you've been told. I guess, we'll probably wrap up in a moment, but I just wanted to ask you a question about if I'm doing no sugar, no grain on a budget, is it possible to do that? Is it, because it seems like in my brain, grains are cheap. a lot of the sugary product. But if I have to go to real food, it's going to cost me more. What's your thoughts on a budget doing no sugar, no grain?
Tony, I've been poor most of my life, and I've been able to eat that way. Chicken is always inexpensive.
Yeah.
You can buy fish on a Tuesday. That's the last day that is usually good. I mean, I know all the tricks to getting, hey, they're going to sell it for cheap right now because it'll be out the door. And, if meat is sell by date by one day, I've done years of doing that, never gotten sick on it. Ground beef, and the funny part is, if you go get ground beef with extra fat in it, so, if you get the stuff that's like 90-10, they're going to charge you more. But the 80-20 is the better ground beef. There's more fat in there,
That's right.
That stuff is almost free. When you think about, you just took 2 pounds of meat and cut it 3 ways. I've been doing that trick for years. I'll just, just cut it up. I'll make a patty out of it, just slap it on the grill, hit it both sides, throw a piece of cheese on top. I'm full all day.
That's
I'm
right.
not wasting my time with anything else. You can buy nuts on sale. Raw nuts is a great way, to have a snack in between. If you can't afford the fresh olives, canned olives are good.
That's right. That's right.
There are ways around this, and you'll notice that when you're eating nutrient-dense food, you're not eating as much of it. You're not just sitting there with pasta going.
Yeah, you get full. I noticed that. In fact, and when you eat those olives, don't sweat it. It's not gonna, unless you're at a really nice Whole Foods kind of place, it's probably not going to be the right kind of oil in it. But don't freak out if you see cottonseed oil. It's okay. I mean, don't freak out. We're not talking about drinking. That's what Crisco came from, guys. If you didn't know, that's a seed oil, and they have to process it to turn into an oil. But my point is, don't lose a lot of sleep over the fact that it's not the perfect oil. In general, you're going to target that. But I would still eat the olives in the canned version. A couple of nice comments here. Marie Jones just talked about, eggs are affordable. It's a value proposition. So I'm completely on board with that big time. Someone is helping one of the other. Marie was helping Beverly, saying some of the veggies are high in carbs. Amen to that. And then another question that came through is the thoughts on not being able to tolerate vegetables or fruit, only meat. So do I need to worry about nutrients in these items not, getting to me? And Angela, I would only say that when you are eating less vegetables and fruit, like the carnivores, it's something about the human body that's amazing. And you would say, well, I'm going to get scurvy from lacking vitamin C, which you tend not to get from meats, except for you do have some of that in the the organ meats. You get a little vitamin C. But what they found is that there's no carnivore that has scurvy. And the reason why is because their body, when they get access to the vitamin, they absorb it much better. And what happens is they just do just fine. So it's actually the opposite of what you're saying. We find that a lot of the nutrients that you need to get, you're going to get from amino acids, which are from protein, that's essential. Fatty acids, which is from fat, that's essential. There's no essential carbohydrate. So if you're eating a lot of carbohydrate, you're going to struggle to get all your essential nutrients. So it's the opposite of what you worry about. So I know we've been told for years that we should be vegetarian. I was a vegetarian for 7 or 8 years, so I get it. But when I did the real research, I found that it didn't make sense to take that approach. And here's a winner for you, Vinnie. Lost 52 pounds since cutting sugars and grains. And I say that is a good experiment outcome. My activity, which includes running and biking, has increased, and all of it begins in the kitchen. So it looks like a fan of your approach, and somebody that 52 pounds is quite substantial. So I guess we're at the hour. I want to wrap up, and I want to ask you if you want to just give us any closing recommendations or comments for anybody listening.
Yeah, I say this all the time. I say it at the end of my movie. No better time than to start right now. If you're listening to this, maybe you've been on the fence. Tony doesn't make a dime out of this. I don't make a dime. We're just here giving free advice. Take the free advice. You've tried everything else. Just try this. You know,
That's right. That's right.
We're not selling anything here. You know, we're just trying to get people healthy because we grew up in a healthy world, and we're trying to get this world back to healthy again. So
that's right. Thank you.
Just go out and do it.
Yeah, Vinny, that's a great way to wrap up things, guys. Vinny and I will continue to share a message of healing. And I don't want anybody to ever walk away from a discussion that I'm involved in feeling obligated to do anything other than what's best for you. We just want to make sure that if you're losing in the fight against chronic disease, I have taken so many people off medicine taking these approaches where they get rid of these harmful substances, rather as processed food, sugar, starch grains, or highly processed oils. The oils I tend to tell people to remember are boca, and that's Spanish for mouth, and it means butter, olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. There are other oils, but that's just an easy way to remember it. So share this video with your family so that they can learn some tips, maybe learn about this great documentary. Vet the documentary. If you see something that you need to let Vinny know about, you don't agree with, that's fine. But understand that the information is out there. You can actually watch that documentary tonight. Just go to Amazon Prime, or is it on Netflix as well?
No, it's the only place, and I purposely, I'll just tell you this real quickly. I know you're right.
Okay.
You know, I was scared to sell it to Netflix because they can take it, they'll give you a lot of money for it, and they can bury it. If there's someone there that doesn't like what we're talking about, they'll go, hey, it's ours now, and we can bury it. So
wow.
we have to keep control of it. I didn't sell it to Hulu for that reason.
Right.
You have Amazon Prime, it's free. And you can rent it for I think $2 or $2.50 or something on iTunes. It's cheap to rent.
Okay.
You know?
That's fair. And that's a good point. Okay, well, we'll wrap up with that, guys. Vinny's episode will be available next Friday. And as I look at my calendar, just to be clear about what day that is, it looks like that's going to be the 28th of August 2020, because I know this video will be out forever. And enjoy the exercise version. If he took his shirt off, he'd probably make me jealous, but I don't want to, because I know you exercise like crazy, and I'm trying to do the same. In fact, this is an exercise night. I'll be going to a workout probably with my oldest son in a little bit after we have a low carb dinner. So everybody who tuned in live, I appreciate. I think the questions, and Vinny, I appreciate your time tonight, and I'll let you get back to all the fun stuff you do. Maybe some more tweets tonight if that's your plans. Okay.
I'll be doing that later on.
That's fair. All right. Take care, buddy. Everybody enjoy the rest of the evening, and don't forget to protect your nest. Take care.
Bye.